Evergreens guide us back to the place where troubles fall away and the world stops for as long as we allow it. I'm always amazed that I'm surprised by the magic that has never failed to greet me after all these years. Maybe it's the world in which we live that makes us cynical, not believing that we can count on someone or something time and time and time again. I don't know if it's the sound of the waves and the gulls, the smell of the tamarack, or memories of safe, happy times. What I do know is that both of my brothers and all of my cousins are drawn to this refuge in the Door County woods, as if magnetic north has grabbed a hold of us. Heading east in what our family refers to as the South Road, one of the 4 roads that comprise what we call the Square, we scan the horizon for the umpteenth time to discover a break in the trees exposing the waters of Lake Michigan. It's at that moment that we have the final sigh, the slow grin, that feeling of peace that enfolds us and has kept us safe for 5 generations. Soft foot-worn sand wraps around the crescent of a bay until it reaches the pier and the lighthouse where we played as children. Faded red, the foghorn still stands at the entrance to the canal, greeting ships as they enter. Now obsolete in the world of computer navigation, we will forever recall the timbre of its deep baritone, as it guided ships through the canal and us to sleep as children. The man who built our cottage was an attorney, a farmer's son, my grandfather, and for some of us, your great-grandfather or even great-great-grandfather. I'm not sure if he would identify himself as a visionary, but I would. He created this haven that his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would flock to. It's a place where the only rule is to be happy. The place I learned to hate my brothers, love my cousins, and love my brothers all over again. To quote Jules Stein, the lyricist from Peter Pan, yes, we know a place where dreams are born, and time is never planned. And this is our story. My grandfather grew up on a farm outside of Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, in a township called Nezowapi. The second-generation son of German immigrant farmers who set their sights for their children somewhere beyond this plot of land they tilled on the Door County Peninsula. My great-grandfather sowed seeds of corn, barley, and oats, tilling the soil with wooden plowshares pulled by oxen, as was typical of an agricultural farmer at the turn of the century. Before I celebrated my first birthday, my grandfather passed away, yet I'm reluctant to say I never knew him. You see, somewhere between the sowing of seeds of corn and barley and oats, my grandfather planted seeds of laughter, camaraderie, loyalty, and love within the hearts of his children. This is the hybrid seed that defines our family. With that seed came the stories, customs, and traditions that bind our family together like an ethereal glue. People and events from the past played in cinematic color on the insides of our eyelids as many of us laid in bed as children, hearing my mother and uncle share, or whoever may have been the spreader of family lore that evening, telling stories of the past through burgundy curtains. Curtains hanging in the bedroom doors of a small white-shingled cottage in the Door County woods. Heartwarming stories filled with humor, shameless irreverence, and never-ending love. Someone once said, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story." But this story is pretty good, with just the slightest bit of embellishment and a bit of filling in the blanks just to keep things moving. Conrad and Carolina Humpke came across the ocean from Germany on the Agnes, a 3-masted schooner around 1855. Yes, yet another Conrad to confuse things. Conrad and Carolina would be Grandpa Herb's grandparents, his father Conrad's parents, and my great-great-grandparents. Please, try to keep up. They set sail with the Arpke family, who came from the same village in Germany, Eicholz, Germany, and whose daughter Mary would later marry my great-grandfather Conrad Simon Humpke. Oh, and Mary's father's name was also Conrad. There was also a Conradina. I mean, come on, people, give it a rest. The Humpkes and the Arpkes were 2 of the 13 families that traveled from Germany on the Agnes and then founded the town of Franklin. The Humpkes were farmers while the Arpke family established and ran a successful sawmill in Franklin Township, near Sheboygan, until Charles Arpke, Mary's father, lost it all due to a problem with alcohol. I'm not sure if that pushed Mary's decision to move to the middle of nowhere, Door County, with a small child, but the girl had to live somewhere now, didn't she? Here's a little nugget for you. The Arpkes ran the Sheboygan County Insane Asylum. As children, Ginny, June, and Bud, and I'm guessing reluctantly, often accompanied their parents to the asylum for a Sunday dinner. We're not sure if the phrase "the inmates are running the asylum" came before or after our ancestors took over. Conrad Simon Humke left his family behind, his wife Mary Arpke and their only child Otto in Franklin Township. He traveled to Door County by stagecoach, well, at least until the horses were done in. The stagecoach stop they were heading for is the very same place we've gone for pizza for decades. That's right. Originally Toggy's Tavern, and now the Stage Road Inn. Food and liquor on the first floor, and ladies and STDs just a staircase away. Conrad cleared the land with his axe, saw, cant-hook, and broadaxe. I'm not even entirely certain what a broadaxe is, but I'm pretty sure I have no interest in using one. Ditto for that cant-hook. And apparently single-handedly built the family homestead. The family Conrad boarded with was the Steffen family. The Steffen son later became a lawyer and interned in Grandpa Herb's law office. Conrad, Mary, and Otto settled into their home in the Door County woods and soon welcomed Herb, Edith, Ida, Edwin, and Walter. I'm guessing the Bible wasn't the only thing going on Sunday nights. And since 8 people in a one-room cabin just didn't seem cozy enough, they took in a young boy named Ernst Lieby, whose family wasn't able to provide for him. It was during the Depression, and we come from a loving and caring family. Next door to the Humke's, well as next door as you can get in late 1800 rural Door County, lived the Sokup family. We don't know much about the Sokups other than they had a young daughter who was once spotted on a meat wagon riding a ham out of the smokehouse. Not sure where that one's going, but it's part of our family lore. The passel of off-color, irreverent, and offensive jokes are endless, so I'll just let you fill in the blanks. As if wielding his axe and the mysterious cant-hook wasn't enough, some got a wild hair up their ass to dig a canal through the peninsula connecting Lake Michigan to Sturgeon Bay, and thus Green Bay. Until the ship canal was a reality, ships had to go around the tip of the peninsula through what was called Death's Door, a passage between Washington Island and the peninsula. It took 18 long years to complete the canal, and we have no idea how many men. Clearly busier than a one-armed paper hanger, our forefather was still one of many to pitch in. Now, I don't know. If my choices were either to chill in a one-room cabin with a wife and 6 kids, or dig a canal, the latter may seem like the most logical choice. Conrad was one of those men who swung an axe, hoisted a shovel, and hauled wagon loads of dirt and stone out of the 7-mile-long channel that would change the future of Sturgeon Bay and Door County. And as the story goes, the canal girls came around. Maybe that's why it took 18 years to complete the canal. I'm amazed that after a day of axe swinging, log rolling, pickaxing, and dirt shoveling, they still had to get up and go to get it up. I'm also thinking that some of these canal Casanovas weren't interested in the painted ladies. I mean, all I'm saying is that I'm pretty sure that mule slept with one eye open and kept the crap flap of his union suit buttoned up. That 2-mile-long trench not only changed the face of the landscape, but Door County's future. 1.3 miles long, 100 feet wide, and 6 feet deep. According to my calculations, that means they moved 270,996 cubic yards of dirt. Oh, and they did this with pickaxes and shovels and hauled the dirt and rocks and tree stumps out with horses and wagons. Oh, and before they did that, they had to clear the land, and I think it's safe to assume that the land was as densely forested as the land behind our cottage. I don't know about you guys, but Death's Door would be looking pretty sweet at this point. So after these pioneers cleared the land, chopped, sawed, broadaxed, and cant-hooked God knows how many trees, and pickaxed, shoveled, and hauled 135 tons of dirt, the Door Peninsula was open and ready for business. Trade, tourism, and you guessed it, the cherry biz flourished. Cherry turnovers, chocolate-covered cherries, cherry coffee, cherry jam, cherry butter, cherry stuff that you put on a salt lick so you can shoot deer kind of stuff, cherry. You get the point. What don't they make out of cherries? And everyone's favorite, Door County cherry pie. Oh, come on, who are we kidding? The Door County Cherry Manhattan. We even had an aunt named Aunt Cherry. Well, okay, her real name was Carrie, but she was married to Walter, the second son, and helped him run the cherry orchard, so, well, yeah, of course we'd call her Aunt Cherry. Little side note on Aunt Carrie, aka Aunt Cherry. She was once bit in the nose by a feral dog, and it never healed quite right, so it was always sort of misshapen. So, yeah, that one had to hurt. While Walter and Cherry worked the orchard, Otto the eldest was co-owner with Frank Pease of a blacksmith shop in town. 2 of the 6 children went on to college. Our grandpa Herb to Valparaiso in Indiana, where he earned his Juris Doctor. Side note, he was banned from his high school graduation ceremony because he wouldn't rat out whoever the ne'er-do-wells were who threw rotten tomatoes or had a rotten tomato fight or ate rotten tomatoes. I don't know. It's not really the point. The point is Grandpa held tight and stood on principle. Edwin, known to most of us as Uncle Doc, became a veterinarian in Door County. Rumor has it all of Doc's patients weren't the 4-legged kind. In fact, he billed himself as a veterinarian, surgeon, and dentist. I mean, how different can, a set of teeth be, or an appendix, or some other vital organ? I don't know, a lot, I'm guessing. Who knows, maybe he's the doctor that stitched up Aunt Carrie's nose. Uncle Doc's love of animals carried beyond his traveling up and down the peninsula in his Model T. In fact, the farm you pass when you're coming down the South Road, Lake Lane, was originally Doc's hobby farm. The farm was run by tenant farmers Al and Tita Sperber. Al was known for his farmer blow. I'm just going to leave that one there for you. Al's wife's name was Tita, or her real name's Lucille, and we have no idea where the name Tita came from. But an interesting little Tita tidbit. We've been told that Tita/Lucille wore her dress inside out when it became soiled. I just hope that wasn't an account of Al's farmer blow. The farm was known for having only animals that were black and white, including hens, roosters, belted Belgian oxen, but most widely known were the black and white, wait for it, fainting sheep. Yep, that's right. A clap of thunder or a honk of a car horn and down they went. You just can't find entertainment like that these days. Doc even won some blue ribbons at the county fair for his belted oxen. Graduating at the top of his class, Grandpa Herb, the Valparaiso Law School alumni, soon met Luella Leverins, a pastor's daughter. The Door County farmer's son turned attorney swept Luella off her feet, and they married in 1923 and started a family at 2636 North 3rd Street in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Luella gave birth to their first son, Conrad, who passed away from leukemia at the age of 5. Understandably devastated, they were then told Luella could have no more children. Undeterred by these setbacks, it was immer favorite for Herb and Luella. That's German for always forward. You may not know where you're headed, but it beats the hell out of staying in the same place. They decided to adopt and soon welcomed their new daughter, June Doris, into their lives. No sooner had they gotten June settled in, and Luella found out she was pregnant with my mom, Virginia. I guess that doctor was wrong. And then a year later, Luella found herself pregnant with my Uncle Bud, named Herb after his dad. I guess that doctor was wrong once again. Grandpa Herb built our cottage before he imagined a family. Originally, it consisted of 2 bedrooms, a screen porch, which is now the front of the great room, a fancy kitchen with a hand pump right outside the door, and the outhouse, once again fancy because it was a 2-seater. It came in handy if you were in the middle of a good story and you wanted to keep your captive audience, captive. Looking back, it seems they must have been damn desperate to hear the end of that story. Grandpa often invited guests to enjoy this refuge in the Door County woods. Veterans nor guests were safe from the antics. Judge Ferdinand Schlichting, who was deathly afraid of porcupines, was one of those guests. Immediately upon arrival, Grandpa disappeared into the woods, returning with a branch from a long-needled pine. He then nailed it to the inside of the seat in the outhouse, just high enough to contact any judge wishing to take the bench, yet low enough to remain hidden. Later that evening, the judge excused himself and soon reappeared from the outhouse, with his pants around his ankles and a 50-foot trail of toilet paper behind him. After adding electricity in 1934, the outhouse light could be turned on and off by means of a light switch in the cottage kitchen, and that alone can tell the story. Every family member has at one time or another had the lights turned off while using the facilities. You'd think a person could at least go to the cat in peace, was the typical response, as they held the roll of toilet paper in one hand and their pants up with the other. In later years, it was not unheard of for my uncle to pull the board off the back of the outhouse, tossing in a firecracker while my mom was the occupant. Never did she need to wonder about the perpetrator of that prank. Eventually, she tried to outsmart him by just crouching in the shadows of the woods, but this just encouraged him to fill a dipper full of water and toss it at her exposed backside, screaming, "Look, everyone, Ginny wet her pants, Ginny wet her pants." Oh, good times. Limited to 2 beds, it was often required that guests share a bed, no matter their gender or marital status. This was also the era of Limburger cheese, also known as stinky cheese, and that should give you an idea of the aroma. Grandpa had guests for the weekend, and he took the rind from the Limburger cheese and tacked it to the wall just above the headboard. His guests spent the night accusing one another of passing gas. No one has accused our family of having a sophisticated sense of humor. Fleecy Fleischman is the guy who delivered our liquor cabinet that came from Doc's house after he passed away. One of those facts you're never sure if you want to know or not, but Uncle Doc died while visiting his brother Otto in Colorado, and he had a heart attack while he was sitting on the crapper. Better than having it in the outhouse, I guess. When he was backing his truck into the driveway, he hit a tree. Wanting to avoid that in the future, we put a rock in front of the tree and painted it white. You guessed it, people. That is the infamous cock rock. Louis Ubi and Eddie Ecke, 2 of Grandpa's handymen, who may not have been so handy, helped build the addition. They were also responsible for once painting the cottage silver. Red trim. I guess during the Depression you were lucky to get any paint at all? Alfred Eberhard is another character from the past. He's better known as the guy who put his eye back in with a spoon. Apparently he put his own eye back into the socket with a spoon from his mess kit after stepping on a landmine in World War I. Neither eye really agreed on which direction to look after that, but he was still a hero in my mother's eyes. Apparently when she was a child, Al had rescued my mother's sunglasses from the two-holer with a coat hanger. It begs you to wonder whether Alfred was just an awfully nice guy or if that landmine dislodged more than an eyeball. Nonetheless, my mom got her sunglasses back and family lore was made. Just now I have occasion to wonder, what was my mother doing looking down into the recesses of the infamous two-holer? She insists she was in the outhouse, relieving herself from the adverse reaction from one too many pieces of blackjack gum. Now, if you've ever had blackjack, it's easy to believe. Not even licorice tastes as licoricey as blackjack gum. But I'm not so sure I'm buying her story. I mean, let's face it, wouldn't you just head into the woods when you felt the blackjack gum coming back at you? I don't care which of the 2 holes you use. I'm thinking both views are pretty much identical, and I want nothing to do with either of them. We still had the pump outside the back door, and we still had the outhouse. Typically, when an outhouse was full, you just dug another hole and moved it. But with the modernization of electricity, it wasn't as easy to relocate, so that meant flipping a board off the back and digging out the remains? Yeah, I know. In my recollection, it was usually, maybe even always, my dad, Uncle Dick, also known as Dickles, who volunteered for that job. Talk about getting the shit end of the stick. Herb Llewellyn and the kids spent summers at BideAWhile. In those days, there were no fire numbers, and all the cottages had names. Big Chief, Crestview, Tamarack. Laundry was done with a wringer washer and draped on pine trees to die in the sun. According to Ginny, my mom, Luella often made macaroni for dinner. Like, a lot. With sand that she tried to pass off as black pepper. Years later, my Aunt Betty tried to convince me that the additional condiment of sand to my fire-roasted hot dog helped polish my fillings. I'm pretty sure they were both full of what my dad dug from the outhouse. When Luella was tired of toiling over her 2-burner hot plate, Uncle Doc often invited them for a home-cooked meal, a bushkraut and Hassenpfeffer stew. For those of you who don't speak German, that's rabbit stew, and God only knows what bushkraut is. But that's how the story goes. In comparison, I imagine macaroni was sounding pretty good after that, and dinner at the asylum maybe tied for first place with that bushkraut and rabbit stew meal. June, Ginny, and Bud were supposedly often sent up to Doc's farm to pull mustard plants. To hear them tell the story, the labor was so grueling it's mind-boggling that Door County Child Services didn't get involved. When they weren't busy toiling beyond the limits of child labor law or retrieving their sunglasses from the crapper, they entertained themselves playing in the barn, and I'm guessing scaring the crap out of a goat or 2. I mean, come on, who wouldn't? I mean, all day long, right? It was in that barn that Doc found an egg that was clearly not a chicken egg. So he sent it home with the 3 so they could watch over it until it hatched. Lo and behold, a few weeks later, out popped the most colorful chicken you've ever seen. Well, that's probably because it was a peacock. That's right, you heard it, a peacock. Where could that have possibly come from, you ask? In my research, I learned a bird circus often came to the door, and Doc assisted in veterinary duties. You do the math. The family cleverly named the new addition to their menagerie Cocky. Really? That's the best you could come up with? At 2636, Cocky lived in John Walters, the next-door neighbor's outhouse. Peacocks are pretty, but nobody ever said they're smart. And Grandpa saved a pony he named Buddy from the glue factory after he ended his run at the circus. The pony, not Grandpa. Buddy lived in John Walters' garage and would often pull the cutter sleigh taking the kids to school on snowy winter days, while the neighbor kids hitched rides on the runners. Kind of takes the Noxie work camp sting out of that mustard-pulling child slavery thing, doesn't it? Certainly having a pony in your garage or busting out of it would be an inconvenience, but a peacock in your outhouse? They're mean. But then again, John Walters may have been unaware of his uninvited guests, as he was not unfamiliar with the pleasures of the fermented grain. He was a boozer. It is rumored that he once made a swimsuit from sputzie skins. That's German for sparrow. That's a lot of sputzies. He also insisted that God lived in a pickle jar. Now, not just any jar of pickles. The gallon jug of pickles on his kitchen table, right next to his bottle of hooch. At least that's what he told Grandpa Herb, supposedly. A horse in the barn, or breaking out of it, a peacock in the shitter, a swimsuit made of bird skins, and God in a jar of gherkins. Now there's some nostalgia for you. 100 years and 5 generations later, much has changed, yet like with so many things, so much has stayed the same. Like our family's vocabulary, which comes from a variety of sources, other than Webster's dictionary, abridged or unabridged. My Uncle Bud referred to someone being with the brothers. We all know he means they're dead, most like being planted by Digger Ballhorn, the Undertaker, if they were from Sheboygan, the town 90 miles south where my parents' aunt and uncle grew up. But with the brothers is colloquialized version of the colloquialism with the Ringling Brothers. When my uncle first coined that phrase in referring to someone who had passed away, my mother said, "What do you mean, buddy? What do you mean with the Ringling Brothers?" He said, "What do you think I mean, you dumb shit? They're dead, just like the Ringling Brothers." This, of course, resulted in peals of laughter between the two of them, the verbal insult of dumb shit disregarded because he is once again her hero and entertainer. These are the stories that would carry my family lore into the future for generations. The laughter, the love, and a sense of belonging that makes us who we are. Decades pass and stories are told, retold, and embellished, while new stories are added to the never-ending fabric that is my family's history. Now an adult, I see the newest generation growing up, being molded and entertained by the stories I too heard as a child. Only now, I'm the storyteller. About 20 years ago, my 6-year-old nephew Chris and I were taking a walk along the beach looking for treasures when he found a dead butterfly. He asked me if it would be able to breathe if he put it in his treasure bag. When I explained to him that it didn't need to breathe because it was dead, he didn't understand what I meant right away. I further explained that the butterfly now lived with Jesus, and he said, Oh, you mean he's with the boys?" I tried not to look surprised as my jaw dropped, and I asked him, "Chrissy, do you mean is he with the brothers?" Yeah, is he with the brothers?" he asked. "Yes, Chris," I said, "he's with the brothers." "Well, then he's okay, right, Uncle T?" my nephew asked. I said, "Yes, then he's okay, Chris." Satisfied, Chris slipped his small hand into mine, looking up at me with trusting brown eyes that mirror my own. We continued down the road in search of treasures, I having found mine through my 6-year-old nephew. The next stitch in the intricate weave of our family's history already set into motion, passed on like the chocolate brown eyes my nephew and I share. Passed on not through genetics, but through the choices of sharing our hearts and our lives, feeding the souls of our family for generations to come. Take a moment to smile, knowing that you too are being woven into the family history. They will be passed on long after we too have joined the brothers. The man who built our cottage was an attorney, a farmer's son, my grandfather. I'm not sure if he would identify himself as a visionary, but I would, because I know a place where dreams are born, and time is never planned.